Just a few seconds before we start. Okay, it is now 11:05 CST, 12:05 EST because I am in Florida. But I would like to say hello, everyone. Thank you for coming here today and giving us your time. I greatly appreciate your presence, and welcome to the first exclusive alumni webinar where we bring different programs to you throughout the year, and I would like to continue this outreach and provide you with different experiences each time. But today we have Dr. Darla Bishop hosting this webinar on finances. Dr. Darla Bishop is a founder of FinanSis, LLC, and an author of How to Afford Everything. She is a sister as well. She joined SLG in fall of 2005 at the University of Michigan, also known as the Beta chapter. Darla has served the sorority in several capacities, one being on the Expansion Advisory Committee and another being the Central Region Director from 2010 to 2013. So let's welcome Darla, and I will turn it over to her.
So I have excellent news and not so great news. So unfortunately, we made the wrong Darla Bishop the host. And so, Kimmy, I'm not sure what we should do. Should we leave and come back? Because since it's my AI assistant,
I'm able to change it.
Oh, it does. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I got scared. All right, let's see if it lets me do it this time.
There
Success!
Yes.
And frankly, it's such a nice surprise because usually I work on Zoom for my professional life and I usually do not look this good. So it was nice to turn the camera.
Great.
You
Pink
look good today.
Looks good on you.
Hello, sisters. We are in webinar mode this morning. And so unfortunately, we can't see your beautiful faces, but that might work out because it's Saturday and you're probably with your families or you might even be working yourself. And so feel free to engage with us using the chat and reaction buttons down below. Let's see. Okay, great. And then if folks join us along the way, we'll just catch them up. Let me get my screen ready for you. Okay, so we're going to have a little bit of real money talk. And because we're in webinar mode, that means that you can tell your deepest, darkest secrets without showing your face by using the Q&A or the chat button. Before we even get started, Kimmy told you a little bit about my history, and I see some folks that I know from when I was very active in the organization, both as an undergrad and as a recent grad. But one of the things I'm super interested to know is what's the biggest money question you're trying to solve or get to the bottom of right now? And so if you could, please drop into the chat. What is the biggest money question you have right now? Luckily for me, my money questions are little in that I just want to really know, when can I start flying business class? These economy seats I'm over it. But my budget tells me we got some time. So I'm watching the chat. Thank you, Danielle.
Investing 101, how to start small.
Awesome.
How to eliminate credit card debt.
Ooh, okay, we'll talk about that.
Investing and paying off debt. How to be smart and make less financial mistakes while starting a small business. Is it too late to invest?
Never.
How to manage credit card, debit, and student loans. Agree how to invest and best approach to retirement, saving early as 18.
Yes. Okay, these are awesome. Thank you. Keep them coming. We'll keep moving. So here's our agenda. So I do want to know a little bit about who's in the room. In webinar mode, my polls didn't come over, so we're going to do this via chat, and I'm okay with that. Kimmy, in webinar mode, does it allow people to come off mute if we give them the ability to verbalize questions?
Yes. Okay. If you click the participants part, you're able to click the attendees and put allow to talk, I believe.
Yes. Okay, great. Yes. All right. Yes. I'm so excited. All right. I'm making sure that everyone is allowed to talk, but what that will mean is that you need to check your local device and turn on your mute button so that we don't get your background noise. But this way we can be interactive this way as well. Almost done, almost done. Okay, I think everybody has access. And this group is actually the perfect size that instead of me doing this via chat, 15 people is like the perfect size to do it verbally. So I'd like to model it for you. I'd like to know where in the world you're calling in from, and I'll put this, where is the mute button? Well, you're muted, so it works. I can't hear you. Oh, you should have it now. Valentine, do you see it now?
Yes, I think I can. I just want to make sure you don't hear the kids in the background.
No, and now, but now I can hear you talking. Okay, good.
Yeah. Oh, there it is. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna mute myself again.
Okay, great. And I think everybody, it looks like everybody has the ability to talk and the ability to mute. Okay, so where in the world are you calling in from? I'm calling in from beautiful Lansing, Michigan.
I'm from Tampa, Florida. Someone said New York, Nebraska.
I'm from Central Florida.
Oh, nice. Okay, that was Lydia, right?
Yes, ma'am.
New York City, Dallas, Texas, Houston, West Melbourne, Racine, Wisconsin, Illinois, Northwest
nice.
Indiana. There's a lot. I love this. South Florida.
Okay, now when did you cross? So I'm fall 05.
I am fall 2016.
Fall 1999.
Yes.
Joyce says spring 2000. Courtney's fall 15. We got summer 2022, fall 10, fall 1999, fall 23, summer 18, spring 98. That's so cool.
Oh, well, spring 98. Were you inducted at, I'm sorry, were you initiated at convention? Because I know they were still doing initiations at convention in the 90s. No, okay.
Isn't that so cool?
Awesome. Okay, we have a fantastic spread. All right. So I'm not sure if you were able to see it, but part of the thing that we sent out in the reminder that came out Thursday or Friday and today were these worksheets. I also put the link in the chat. Let me make sure it's still there, so you don't have to scroll up and find it. And I'd like you to take a few minutes and take the spending personality quiz. I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, if you didn't get the worksheets, I just dropped the link. And I'm also pulling it up. Spending personality quiz. We can all do it together because in this workshop, hopefully you have something to write with and something to write on. And if you don't, I will pause to make sure you can go get that. It's bigger. Okay, so we'll do it together. It only takes a few minutes. So when you receive your paycheck, what's your first thought? A, pay bills and save whatever is left. B, plan a major purchase or night out. C, save a portion, spend a little. D, paycheck, I'm already planning my next shopping spree. Next question. How do you feel about budgeting? A, I stick to my budget religiously. B, I try to budget, but it's not strict. C, budgeting is necessary, but I can be flexible. D, what's a budget? Next question. What prompts you to shop? A, only when I need something specific. B, sales and special deals. My email is my bae. C, when I'm feeling emotional or want to reward myself. D, anytime. I love shopping. The next one, how do you feel after making a big purchase? A, content, especially if it was planned and within budget. B, excited, but sometimes a little bit guilty. C, mixed feelings. It depends on what it was. D, thrilled. I cannot wait till my next big buy. For me, this is usually plane tickets. Next question. How often do you impulse buy? A, rarely, if ever. B, occasionally, if it's a good deal. C, fairly often, especially if I'm stressed. D, all the time, it's a habit. Okay, next question. Do you research before buying an expensive item? A, always. I compare prices and check reviews. B, usually, unless it's a limited time offer. C, sometimes, but it's not my top priority. D, research. No, I go with my gut feeling. Last two. So what is your approach to sales and discounts? A, it's useful for items I was already planning to buy. B, sales and discounts are tempting, but I try to be cautious. C, they are hard to resist. I end up buying things I didn't plan to. D, I love sales, more items for less money. Last one. How do you handle credit cards? A, I use them carefully and pay off the balance promptly. I use them, but sometimes struggle to pay in full. C, I rely on them often and worry about debt. D, credit cards are my best friends for shopping sprees. So of those questions, could you put in the chat whether you had mostly A's, B's, C's, or D's?
So we have mostly B's, mostly A's. We have a mix. I got a mix too. And then we have another mix again. We have C, C, C's, and mix and mix.
Okay, thank you for sharing your personalities. We'll talk about that and why that matters. All right, so the next thing on our list is I want to make sure that this time that we spend together is valuable for you, right? Like this is a Saturday. Some of you probably have your kids with you or you've locked yourself into a corner so that they can leave you alone for this time. And so I want to make sure that this feels good to you. So first off, I forgot to check earlier. So I want to take a minute here to make sure you have something to write on, something to write with, and if you have your mobile device, because we're going to do a couple of polls using an online polling service. If you are on a regular computer, you can also change windows to do the poll, but it's an easier experience if you have a mobile device with you as well. So now that we know a little bit about your spending personality, at least from the quiz from the How to Afford Everything book, I want to ask you in real time, what do you hope to get out of this session? Because yes, I have an agenda, I have some things I'm going to talk about, but I want to make sure that we spend the majority of the time on the things that you have the most and biggest and most important questions about. So here's a QR code. I will also drop into the chat a link to Mentimeter. I don't know if you've ever used Mentimeter before, but it is a useful tool for getting audience feedback in online meetings and in-person meetings too. These are good. Okay, insight, clarity. I love clarity. Strategies, tips on discipline, hope, investing knowledge, motivation. Oh, we'll talk about motivation and inspiration and habit in a moment. insights, tips? Okay. All right, we're gonna cover all that. I'm feeling good. Switching screens, sorry about that. If you haven't already, could you also take a moment and update your Zoom name to what you prefer to be called? So that way, if you raise your hand or you want to interact, I don't call you the wrong thing. Do that sometimes in class and I always feel bad about it. Okay, so just so that we're all on the same page, I want to make sure that you understand how I approach financial literacy. So for me, financial literacy is the understanding of money and how it's spent and saved. Right. So financial literacy is the ability to understand, but also effectively use various financial skills, including financial management, budgeting, and investment. So just so that you know where I'm coming from in terms of this. When it comes to financial literacy, there are 5 key components. So the first is earn. And that's because most of us have to work for our money. And even if we are not working in a traditional sense, many of us might be entrepreneurs or even using money that we get access to by virtue of being a student or allowance we get from our working outside the home partner to manage the household finances. And then there's saving and investing, spending, which is sometimes the easiest part of financial literacy, borrowing, and protecting. So let's talk about earning for a little bit. I want to know by a show of hands, how many of you currently work for either a W-2 or a 1099? So please raise your hand if you work for and receive a W-2 or a 1099, meaning you're employed by someone or are a contractor for a company. I'm checking to see how many that is. Okay, so about half. For the other half of you that did not raise your hand, do you mind either dropping into the chat or coming off of mute and verbalizing how you currently earn money? Do you own a business? Do you have income because of a partner or because of you had rich parents and I wonder if they're adopting? Okay, folks are employed. Income from partner. Mm-hmm. Income from mom. Mm-hmm. Wish I had a side. Okay, we can talk about that. So Rebecca, you wish you had a side hustle. Is it because you are currently, like, tell me more. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So a different workshop that I do, but it's really important to talk about is if you are working outside of the home, or even if you're running a business, is you might not realize what things make you happy or not in that workspace. Because look, nobody dreams of labor, but if you're going to spend and dedicate such a big component of your life to a job, to working, we might as well try to enjoy parts of it. And so if you'll indulge me, I'd love to go through this exercise. If I have a volunteer, is there any volunteer who'd like to tell me a little bit about their first job? Okay, Courtney, are you my volunteer?
I can go if nobody else wants to go.
All right. So, Kimmy, what was your first job? What was the title?
Adjunct professor.
Let's see if let me type in. And do you remember what did you make at that job?
Oof. I believe it was 3,600 per class total within that for 5 months per term. So I think it was like I had 2 classes per term.
So, how many weeks are in the semester? Like 12 or 14?
14.
All right, we're gonna do some math. I'm pulling out my favorite calculator, which is also known as my phone. Okay, so we're gonna say that's about $5.15 a week. All right, what did you love about being an adjunct professor?
I loved the flexibility and the networking.
What didn't you love?
The pay and you're always working more than what you should be working.
So outside of teaching, what did it entail? Like, why were you working more than you should have been working?
Because you had to email them all the time. When they responded, you had to grade outside of teaching hours. And there's a lot of papers and tests and quizzes, but also you had to create syllabi and content and lectures
Okay,
and go through the textbook as well.
yeah. So not just standing in front of a class delivering a lecture or a course or work or a class, but actually needing to do all the administrative stuff in
Yeah.
between before and after the term.
Yes.
Universities get a good deal.
Yes, they do.
Thank you. That wasn't so bad, right? I'd love to hear if there's an audience member who might want to tell me about their current or most recent job. Okay. Is it Tamara?
Hi, it's Tamara.
Yeah. Hey, Tamara.
Hi. So my most recent job was I was a communications director for an elected official.
Nice. And do you remember what you got paid for that?
65
K per year?
per year.
What did you love about that job?
The access and that it was just an ever-changing environment. Access to other elected officials, federal, local, state, be able to connect with reporters.
I want to, you talked about the ever-changing environment. So like, it was like a new day every day, something new.
Every day was, exactly. Every day was, and nothing was ever the same.
If you had a magic wand and could change something about how that job works, what would it be?
In a perfect world, I think compensation for OT. It was never a 40-hour work week. It was at least 60 to 70, if not more.
Right, but that paycheck didn't change.
Nope.
Yeah. Thank you. Anyone want to tell? Thank you, Tamara. Anyone want to tell me about their dream job? Again, I recognize that we do not dream of labor, but in a world that is still capitalist, working is part of it. Nobody has a dream job. Okay. I'll tell you mine. I would love to be a philanthropist. But I don't have enough money to do that yet. So I have to use somebody else's money.
I was gonna say world traveler, but that's not really a job.
I mean, but could it be?
Yeah, in this day and age it could. Because you can monetize anything on social media at this point.
So like an influencer.
Yeah, we're not
And what would
following the
you get?
influencing.
Yeah, influencing. Yeah. What would you get paid for that? Was that Joy?
Yeah, that was me. What would I get paid for that? I don't know, but it would have to pay more than what I get now. And I don't know. I would have to be pretty popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're dreaming. So like, what do you need?
All right.
100,000 a year? You need 200,000 a year?
No, it's got to be like more than $500,000.
Okay, we got to have 500K. And then are you paying the travel as the world traveler? Are you paying the traveler out of that 500K, or is the
I'm
travel-
assuming that I have sponsors that would sponsor my travel.
so the 500K is what you net?
Yeah.
Love this. Why does this excite you?
Because I'm passionate about traveling and learning about other cultures. And it would give me room to also obviously give back to your point of the philanthropy piece.
Okay, I love this. We won't continue, but the reason I wanted to pause here before we even talk about money is because we work for money, right? So anybody who's like, I love my job, I'm passionate, that's wonderful, and I'm so happy for you. And if that job doesn't pay you enough to pay your bills, then we have to figure out how to do something different. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you are working a job that either you don't like, you don't love, there are things about it that aren't great, or maybe you do love it, but the money isn't adding up for the lifestyle you currently have or that you're trying to get to, then doing an exercise like this of mapping out your career can be really telling about what things you love and don't love about your work life and what things you want to invite should you be in the position to change your work situation. The other piece that's really important is to map your salary, because one of the reasons I put this job category of your most impressive title is I once had a job that on paper was amazing. Like my LinkedIn, that's kind of DMs I would get on LinkedIn, like, wow, you're really supporting the CEO. But the job was trash. The job was trash. It was trash in so many ways. And it's important for us to recognize that title ain't always it. And so that if we can figure out what are the things that we need to get from work, in addition to the amount of money that we need from that job or from our job plus other pursuits, so that our life can flow more easily, that it helps you to guide not only a job search, but your salary negotiation and how you use the benefits that are available to you through that employer or through that contract company. So that's why I wanted to take a minute to do this. The other piece about earning is, by show of hands, for those of you who are currently working or recently worked, when you were in the process of onboarding for that job, raise your hand if you negotiated your pay. Six, okay, I love that. For the folks who didn't raise their hand, do you mind sharing with us what kept you from negotiating? And you can put it in the chat if you don't want to verbalize.
Hey, Darla.
So,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead next.
um, hi, I'm Lydia, for those of you that don't know me. And I didn't negotiate my pay. I actually just left my job Friday as a English and language arts teacher. And one of the reasons why I did not negotiate my pay was whenever I came in almost 2 years ago, I was basically told, hey, you're coming in during the largest pay raise. You're welcome. That was the attitude. That was the mindset. The teachers before me were getting about 39,000 a year. So being put at 48, it was seen as, oh, well, if you don't have a master's, if you haven't worked in the field, then you should be grateful for this. Which, as we know, after 2020, 48,000, especially if you have a couple of kids and a family, that only gets you so far.
Mm-hmm. And so the employer gave you messages, whether they were official or unofficial messages, that like, yeah, we don't really negotiate here. We're giving you the best we're going to give you. So don't even try.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with the environment, especially with them being older, it was just like, oh, you're in that millennium age, so just be happy with whatever you get.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Joy, do you want to share? Or is there a hand raised from something?
Oh, I think I'm sorry. I need to lower my hand. Yeah, I had said in the chat about this was a lesson that I learned myself, and I can share that piece. But yeah. So I started my career in New York, and so I did that intentionally. I moved from Florida to New York to get my first like career job, because I knew that starting in Florida it would be lower pay. But then when I came back to Florida with kids, I took a 23% pay cut for a job. And I was not able to get back to that level of pay for another 5 years. So, and that's something that I learned, that, you know, women typically don't negotiate their salaries. We're just happy to kind of have a job, and we're more concerned with providing, particularly if we're the breadwinner or if we have a family. So in that aspect, that's an advice that I would give, you know, is always negotiate, even if it's, you know, a few thousand more, but never take the first offer.
Rebecca?
Yeah, thanks. My name's Rebecca. I'm from Chicago, SEMA, Chicago Metro Alumni-Association. And my first career job was right out of grad school, in a management position, probably starting at 58K with a master's. And my counterparts in corporate were probably earning at least 10 to 15,000 more than I was, but I knew I worked in nonprofit that would be lower. But because I didn't have the management experience, I didn't think I could negotiate. But now looking at it, you know, 7 years later, I would take a different approach based on where I'm at now.
Yeah. And part of it is, you know, I don't know if you all know this, but as women in the workplace, we are really just a couple of generations in owning our financial destiny, right? Like, women in the US were not allowed to have bank accounts, be on loans without a male's permission, essentially a male cosigner, until 1974. And so we are still, even though we are for even longer than that, been managing household budgets and family finances and making sure that things inside the home were well run and that everyone in the house had everything we need. There's still we have this generational disadvantage around talking about money, understanding money, feeling comfortable to negotiate. And there are some costs that come along with being able to negotiate. So one of the pieces that I wanted to talk about in earning is there are a few things that I'd like you to do and to think about when you can fit them in to your to-do list, right? Because the money that is coming into your house, when you're trying to get control of your money, there's really only 3 things you can do, right? So I wrote a book, but in order to write the book, I read more than 100 to make sure that I was understanding money myself. And it's really only 3 things you can do to fix your money, right? You can earn more, you can spend less or spend below what you have coming into the door, and you can make investments that also allow you to earn more, right? So there's really only 3 things. If you read any financial literacy book or blog or watch anyone on Instagram, they're all playing with those same 3 levers. You really only have 3 levers. And so if you're in the position to figure out whether the money you have coming in the door, whether that's from working, whether that's from your spouse or partner working, or whether that's from you having a business, whether it's a full-blown business or a side hustle, that you do your best to maximize that. And what does that mean? So there are 3 things that I want to encourage you to look at. Have you been in your job for more than 2.5 years? If you've been in your job for more than 2.5 years, it is possible that your salary has not kept up with inflation. Because we're in 2024 and inflation is measuring at 7%, it is highly likely that your salary increases have not kept up with that, as typical salary increases in the US are 3.2%. So if you've been in a job for more than 2 years, it might be a good idea to update your resume and to think about what it might look like to change jobs. The second thing is if you are employed in a traditional sense, either where you get a W-2, meaning you're employed by a company or firm, or even as a contractor, is to take a minute and make sure that you are fully understanding the benefits that are attached to that job. One of the things that people forget is compensation is not just the pay you receive. That's the biggest part that we negotiate and that we're concerned about. And the other things that the company or firm offers to their employees or contractors can be very valuable. I'd like to give a few examples. So health insurance is the one that people think of automatically, but also check to see if the employer or firm offers an employee assistance program, an EAP. An employee assistance program has all types of things. It could offer free counseling. So if you have been working through any type of issue in home, grief, loss, financial situation, sadness, depression, leftover trauma, whatever it is, you can get free therapy. So that saves you money, because even if you have health insurance, you might be needing to pay out of pocket for copay. There's financial counseling, career counseling, legal services. I'll tell you a story. Just a few years ago, we were in the process of changing one of our properties, and we couldn't figure out the laws in the new state we were living in because we were living elsewhere. And so I looked up my employer's EAP, and it turns out that they had legal services. So I was able to get a free 30-minute consultation with a lawyer in our new state to ask them about the rules around being a landlord and evicting and how we had to write the lease. And then if I needed more time from that attorney, they would have done so at 25% off of their rate, right? So, but I was able to get all the answers I needed in that 30-minute consultation. So that saved me at least $400. And if I needed to do more services, it would be additional cost reduction. So make sure that you are taking advantage of many employers, especially if you are part of a larger company. What might also have technology discounts, which might mean a discount on your cell phone or internet service at home, as well as a savings or discount program so that you can get discounts when you shop, when you order things, or when you travel. And so if you haven't looked at your full benefits package recently, I highly encourage you to take a minute in the next week or so to look through the benefits package in case there are things that can either save you money or add additional value to your life, even outside of your dollar for dollar paycheck that comes to direct deposit. The third thing that I like to, sorry, I was looking at the chat to make sure I wasn't missing something. The third thing is, yes, and Valeria said this, like, if you are in the position, but it's to renegotiate your salary, there are a few things that you can do to set yourself up for success. Is go to your resume and make sure that you've actually updated your resume in the recent past. I remember I was working with someone and I had been promoted and became this person's boss. And about a year after, they came to me complaining, well, I want to be promoted. How come no one's promoted me? And I said, well, have you brought me your resume since I'm your boss now? She's like, no, you don't have that. I'm like, no, I don't have your resume. And so your boss, the people you work with, may have never seen your resume, especially if they've changed hands. If the person on your team that's supervising you has changed, they've probably never seen your resume. And so it's an awesome time to update your resume to include any new skills, new trainings, new certifications, new webinars, new things that you've done even outside of work that have added to your toolbox. You know, if you're a stay-at-home parent, you're doing all types of stuff to keep that house running. Don't discount that experience. If you volunteer with SLG or other organizations, like, what are you doing for those organizations that might also add value to your employer? And make sure that you include those, and to start to sneak that language in anytime you're having a one-on-one, anytime you're having a performance review about, here are the things that I bring to this organization that add value, so that when you're ready to ask for that meeting to discuss your compensation, they've had a few months of you putting little seeds in their ear about all the value you add to the organization, and you can have a great conversation. And that conversation can go one of a few ways. It might be, you're absolutely right, we will find the money, we will give you the money. It might go, you're absolutely right, you bring so much value, we cannot believe we're so lucky to have you, but we don't have funds to give you an increase. And so at that point, you can decide, I'm going to stay here and stay in my role because I really do like this work environment. Or you can decide, I'd like to try to negotiate something else. Maybe more vacation time would add value to your life, even if they can't pay you more money. Maybe an additional access to flexibility or to professional development funds, or the ability to go to a conference will add value to your life. Or you might decide, well, I've been spending the last 3-6 months telling these people how much value I add to the organization. Let me make sure it's on my resume and my LinkedIn, and I'm going to go find a person who's going to pay me 10 or 15 or 20% more anyway. Do you know that statistically speaking, folks who change jobs every 2.5 years end up making more than $1.3 million over their work life if they retire at age 65 than people who stay in jobs for more than 2 years on average? I don't know if you knew that. Now you do. And so if you are, and then if you have this, I want to pause there. Any questions about the things I've talked about so far? Okay, I'm checking the chat.
Lydia said, can't changing jobs regularly affect retirement?
Tell me, well, yes, in certain fields. Yes. So if you are if you are working an occupation like being a teacher, especially where you are in more of a pension plan, then yes, changing jobs regularly can change your retirement. However, if you work in any industry where you are contributing to your own retirement, either through a 401k or a 403b or similar retirement plan, where you put money in plus your employer puts money in, then no, changing jobs regularly will not affect your retirement. What you'll need to do is if you're thinking about being on this kind of, I'm going to change jobs every few years cycle, you just want to make sure that you know what the minimum vesting time is. When it comes to retirement, that means that most employers want you to stay at least 2 or 3 years so that any money that they've given you as a match, you get to keep even when you change employers. So you want to make sure that you are staying in that job long enough to get full vesting. And again, national average is either 2 or 3 years. And then you'll want to make sure that you understand how to move that 401k or 403b to your own account, which is actually very simple to do with any of the national brokerage houses like Fidelity, TIAA, or Vanguard. And so if you work in an industry where you're still pension eligible, then yes, you do have to be more careful about the job switching. But if you work in an industry where you're putting money into your retirement and your employer is providing some type of match, then nope, take that money with you and just make sure that you have spent long enough at the organization for those funds to be vested. I appreciate you asking that, Lydia. Kimmy,
Yes. Courtney asks, does that statistic include being promoted in the same company?
Mm-hmm. And so you want it, so you can stay in the same company, but you also might still be missing the ability to earn more. So I'll give you an example. When I was working at the University of Michigan, I changed job categories and I went from a research assistant 1 to a research assistant 2. But I was told the university has a policy that we cannot increase salary any more than 10%. So even though I was changing job categories, changing departments, changing teams, and going to a higher category in my job, the university had a policy that they could not give me a raise more than 10%. So that also limited my ability. Whereas if I had left the university and decided to get a job at a different university, I could likely negotiate for a 15 or 17% increase because the market had risen that high in the time I was in the research assistant 1 and then transitioned to a research assistant 2. So yes, it's important because your company may have a policy intern, whether it's official or unofficial, that there's a cap on promotions that we yes, you got promoted, but we can only raise your pay 10%. Thank you for asking that, Courtney. Okay, we talked a lot about earning. Before I moved us over to saving and investing, I want to check what questions do you have that you expected us to talk about, you expected me to cover that I haven't gotten to yet, because I don't want to move on too quickly.
Joy says, facts. I've only ever been promoted by a direct manager once who was a woman of color. All my other promotions were self-sought, i.e. job changes.
Yeah, that's right. One last thing that I want to talk about earning is it's important to realize that there are geographical differences in cost of living. And so if you are ever in the position where you are considering taking a job, either that requires you to move or is simply based in a different area of the country, make sure that you use a salary comparison tool to ensure that you are not underpricing yourself in a new market. The very first time I moved from Michigan to Washington, D.C., I've done this move a couple of times because I'm a military spouse. Thanks, Army. I remember thinking about what I wanted my salary to be. And I'll tell you real numbers because real numbers matter. But please keep in mind that this was some years ago. So I don't know how this will fare in today's market. But when I was leaving Michigan, I was making $47,000 a year with a master's degree. And so when I was moving to DC, I was like, I want to make 52. Because if I make 52, that's like an extra, like almost $500 a month. And that'll be like plenty for me to pay my new bills. Good thing I looked in the CNN Money has a fantastic tool for this called the CNN Money City Salary Comparison Tool. You basically put in your salary plus the nearest metropolitan area close to you. So I put in my salary, and I think I had to choose Detroit because that was the biggest city next to me. And then I picked that I was moving to DC. And my little $52,000 that I was saying, if I can get to $52,000 would be great. I would have been really broke because the housing cost was 30% more. The transportation cost was 17% more, and the food costs were about 20% more. So according to that tool, I really needed to make at least 59 for me to maintain the same lifestyle I had in Michigan on 47. So if you're ever considering a job that is either out of area or for a company that is based in a different area, make sure that you understand the salary that is prevailing or comparative to where you live so that you don't miss out on money because you're thinking about small town living in a big city. Okay, cool. I want to move on. So of the 5 components, and let me share a visual because it's been a while. You've just been looking at my face, which looks great, but we can share a different visual. Is saving and investing. Okay, so does anyone care to venture, and there is no wrong answer, what is the difference between saving and investing?
Just throwing it out there. I think investing can make money for you, and saving kind of could stay put.
Yes, I love that. Any additions to what Valentine told us?
Arena says investing can become passive income.
Mm-hmm. Possibly, yes. Yes.
Saving is like when you put little money to the side for extra.
That's right. Thank you. Okay, so I want to talk about, there are 3 levels of savings that I like to talk about, and then we'll talk about investing. So the first level of savings is, I refer to this as the cushion. So this is the little bit of extra money that you keep into your checking account. So that way, in case you swiped your debit card more than you expected, or the price on something you do all the time went up and you weren't aware, or you accidentally get double charged for something, this amount of savings is the cushion that you keep in your main bank account so that in case an additional charge comes through, or something costs more than you expected, or you just have, because of the way your paychecks ran that month, an extra charge that came in sooner than you needed it to, so that you don't overdraft your account. And so what I always encourage people to do is to build a cushion. And the cushion doesn't have to be huge. It could be, if you know that your bill is usually $50, build in a 10 to 15% cushion in terms of how you plan your budget. So if you know that I'm trying to think what bill is like $55. Maybe your cell phone bill, if you are not still paying on a phone, might be around $55. So maybe put 60 or 62 or 65 into your line item so that you always have a little bit of wiggle room in your account. So that's the first level, is the cushion. The second level is, I like to call this the O fund. I know there are children nearby, so we're just going to go the O fund. The OSH fund is about $1,000 that you can put your hands on quickly. And this would probably be in a savings account, either at the same institution that you have a checking account, or at an institution that you can easily get to or transfer money to or from. The reason I say $1,000, because while $1,000 can't change the world, it can buy you time, and it can actually solve quite a few problems if something comes up. And this is the amount of money, again, that you want to be able to put your hand on. This OSH is also really helpful is if you don't have any savings right now and you're trying to figure out how to even start, $1,000 is a great goal to start from. right? So if you're like, I don't have any extra money saved, anything I have in this savings account is really just a second checking account because I always have to transfer it, is I'd like you to think about what you could do to put $1,000 away. Would it mean picking up a temporary side hustle? Would it mean selling some of the things in your home that you don't really use, maybe clothes or toys or electronics? Would it mean picking up some freelance work because you have a skill or a talent that you could sell for a really short amount of time? Does it mean going to get a different job so that you just have more money so that you could actually put $1,000 away? So if you don't have anything, putting together this OSH fund is something that could like change how you feel about money, because you know you have something that you don't have to put on a credit card, that you don't have to go into debt for if a new emergency or situation comes up. The third level, yeah, is there a question, Kimmy?
Yes, someone's asking, are there slides up, and are they supposed to see the slides?
Oh, there are not slides up.
Thank you.
The third level is this emergency fund. So how many of you know how much is an emergency fund supposed to be? Put it in the chat.
Someone said 500. 3 months worth of bills, 3 to 6 months worth of bills, or your monthly income, 1 to 3 months of salary.
Okay, great. So you all have heard this, right? So conventional wisdom says that an emergency fund, some people use the term fully funded emergency fund. An emergency fund has 3 to 6 months. And there's some debate. Is it 3 to 6 months of your salary, or is it 3 to 6 months of your income? And I like to argue that it's of your salary or your expenses. And I like to say it's of your expenses, because if you're living right, and we're going to get you there, that your salary is higher than your expenses, right? And so if you make $120,000 a year, so basically $10,000 a month, hopefully your expenses are somewhere in the $8,000 or lower mark. So that means that you wouldn't need to put 10,000 times 3 or 6 away. You just need to put that 8,000 times 3 or 6 away. And if that feels, a lot of times, if you're just starting out or starting over, putting away 3 whole months of your expenses can feel like impossible. And so if this is something that you want to work on in the future, here's how I suggest you do it. You first figure out what are your actual expenses. So not how much money you come in, but how much actually goes out over the course of the month. So figure out what your monthly expenses are. Don't worry so much about your income yet. What are your monthly expenses? And to figure out how you could save 1 full month. And then once you have 1 full month, figure out how you could get a second month and then a third month. So that way you're slowly building it. Right, and it would be of bills or expenses. Now, there are a couple of asterisks I want to put here. If you are a 1-income household, then having more time is better, because you're relying on 1 paycheck, so you won't have as much wiggle room to say, well, this paycheck can cover it or this paycheck can cover it. So you might want to aim for 6 months instead of the 3. Another piece is that if you have inconsistent income, so if you are in sales or a big component of your income is commission based or bonus based, then you also will want to go on that heavier side to make sure that your year rolls smoothly despite the ups and downs in your income. Now let's talk about investing. So could you show me by show of hands, who has any type of retirement account, whether it's an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, a SEP? Okay, good. The majority of you. I love this. Any of the terms I just said, anybody say, I've never heard of that? IRA, does anyone need a clarification? No, okay. I'll do it anyway. So there's retirement investments, and then there's other non-retirement investments. So the main retirement investment types that you have An IRA, so this is an individual retirement account. An individual retirement account is an account that you set up yourself as an individual. You can do this through many banks, but you can also do it through any of the big brokerage charges. So you might have heard of Fidelity or Vanguard or Charles Schwab or TIAA-CREF. And essentially you say, I want to open up yes, I can. Thank you for that note, Rebecca. I want to open up my own retirement account so that I have additional funds. And then there are employer sponsored plans where essentially you put in money, they put in money, the money mixes up and grows together. Those are 401ks and 403bs. Those work very similarly. The difference is that 401ks are for private companies, whereas, or for companies that are for profit, and 403bs is the same type of retirement vehicle, but for a nonprofit company. So if you switch between working for for-profits and nonprofits, you might have both. And then there's a SEP, and that is essentially a special needs retirement. So if you are self-employed, you can put additional funds into this type of retirement vehicle. Or if you are a stay-at-home spouse and your spouse can contribute to retirement on your behalf in one of these self-directed plans, or a SEP. Someone asked about the benefits of high yield savings account. Yes, I can't believe I missed that. It's because I have slides, but I don't like them. I like talking to people. So if you want, I can pull the slides back up. So I'm going to switch back to high yield savings account. So there are a few different kinds of accounts that you likely have in managing your money. I like to think of them as different rooms in a house. So your checking account is kind of like a lobby, where this is where the money comes in and out all day, right? Your paycheck probably goes there, the bills go out. When you swipe your debit card, when you pay for food, the money comes in and out all day, every month, in and out. Your savings account is kind of like a waiting room where the money is chilling in there until someone calls it for a purpose. So maybe you have been putting money aside because you know once a year you have a large insurance bill. So you put the money in the waiting room, and then when they come and say insurance bill, you take the money out and go pay the insurance bill. So that's kind of like a waiting room. And a high yield savings account is like the big boss in the back, where that's where you would put your emergency fund or money that you're putting towards goals that you don't need right away. And the benefit of having a high yield savings account versus a traditional savings account at one of your banks or credit unions is that you'll get sometimes 10 times the interest. So I have a bank account with Chase that has a checking and a savings account attached to it. The savings account gets 0.01% interest. So I only keep $200 in there just in case I accidentally swipe too much and I need to put my money. So basically that's where my cushion is. My cushion is in that savings account attached to my checking account. Whereas the money that I'm saving for that big bill we have once a year, I actually have that in a high yield savings account. The emergency fund is in a high yield savings account because that account gets right now 4.2% interest, much bigger than 0.01% interest. So what that means is that every month I see a little $60, $80, $90 deposit on the first of the month because that's the interest that I own. And I didn't do anything. I just let the money sit there until it's time to be used for an emergency or for the thing we're saving it and putting it aside for. Samantha, you have your hand raised. I'd love to answer your question. Okay, maybe she lowered it because she doesn't actually have a question. Okay, I'll move on. Thank you for asking about that, Rebecca. I'm sorry that I missed it. Does anyone here have a high yield savings account? Who's it with? Mine is with Ally. Jenna, where's yours? Also Ally. Adrian, where's yours? Wealthfront. Wealthfront. If you're thinking about a high yield savings account, here's what matters. Go to their website, make sure they're FDIC insured or NCQA insured, which basically means that they are backed by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation or the National Credit Union Association, so that if there's weird fraud that happens, your money is protected because it's insured, and that you like the interface. Like, that's all that really matters. Like, if you like the way the app looks and works, if the interest rate is about right, the interest rates change month to month. quarter to quarter. And so if it's up there and it's higher than your traditional savings account, that's all that matters. What matters is that it's an interface you like and that it has the federal government backing, either through the bank insurance or through the credit union insurance. Doesn't have to be complicated. Let's talk about investing, because I believe I have, what, 10 minutes left, Kimmy?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So, oh, a question from Nancy. What is better, high yield savings or money markets accounts? I'm so glad you asked this question. So it depends on your goals and how quickly you need to access the money. So the thing about a money market account is it is in the market. So it is leveraging the fact, basically the institution is saying, you let us hold your money and we're going to put it in with everyone else's money that allows us to hold it in a money market account. And we're going to let it play in the stock market so that you can take advantage of the ups and downs, but again, mostly up, because the stock market kind of goes like this, where it goes up and down, but over time, it's always going up. So that you can get a cut of the interest that we make by putting everyone's money together and letting it play in the market. So a money market account can be great in that it has really nice high returns, but those returns are not guaranteed because the money is in the market. And so Apple right now, Microsoft, Tesla, all these big stocks are having issues. They're lower than they've been. Their market caps are coming down. And so that means that if you have money in a market, in a money market, you're probably seeing some deeper lows as it does that up and down. And those deeper lows are fine if you don't need the money right away. If you have a longer time horizon, at least 1 to 2 years before you ever need to touch the money, yes, let it play in the money market account. If the funds are something that you might need to put your hands on because it's your emergency fund, because you're saving for a kitchen remodel, or because you're saving for someone's tuition, it's better to have those funds in a high yield savings account, because those come with the insurance and with the interest rate that is backed by a bank versus backed by the stock market. So the way to decide is when do I need the money and what's the purpose of the money? Nancy, did I answer your question? Awesome. Well, oh, thanks. I appreciate that. All right. Adrian, your hand is up. Do you have a question?
No question, sorry.
Okay. Okay, so one of the main questions that you all posed to me when we first started this is, how do I start investing? So the great news is it's easier than ever. The cool thing about the pandemic did a lot of not so great things, but it did make it really easy for retail investors. That's people like you and me, regular folks who are not part of an institution, who are not part of a financial setup, who are not part of an investment club, to participate in investing. And so if you have a 401k, a 403b, or an IRA, you are already investing. I hope. One of the things that I encourage you to do is, if you have a 403b, a 401k, or an IRA, is to double check that your money is actually invested. Because investing in those accounts is a two-step process. So first, you have to actually put the money in the container. So the 401k, the 403b, the IRA is like the cup that the money sits in. That's the container. So first, you have to put the money in the container. That's the first part. But then once the money is there, you have to tell it, I want you to go buy this many shares of such and such stock, this many shares of such and such index fund. The easiest way to get started with investing is usually through your employer. And the great news about investing through your employer, through one of those retirement accounts, is that money has a lot of tax advantages. And so I don't know, when I started investing, and I started investing through my employer's retirement account, the person who does our taxes had told us our taxes were too high and that he needed me to put the maximum amount in my company sponsored retirement plan. And at that time, it was about $20,000 a year. So I updated my biweekly paycheck to put the $787 that needed to go so that my tax bill could be lower. But that meant I was putting away $20,000 every single year for future Darla. And Uncle Sam was getting a lower cut of my paycheck because I was putting that money away pre-tax. And I don't know about you, but I don't know any other way that I would have at 26 years old figured out how to save $20,000 for future me. It was not a priority, but because it was so easy through the retirement plan, that's the easiest way. And then if you're just starting, the best thing to do is to put it in an index fund. An index fund is exactly what it sounds like. It's a bunch of stocks and bonds all mixed up and indexed so that you have a nice mix of risk, a nice mix of bonds, a nice mix of stocks, meaning that you own little slices of a company, so that you are having lower risk overall. And then kind of set it and forget it and put it automatic. And so if you are one of those people who, in addition to having your retirement started, you're interested in doing something else, you can start one of two things. You can start a different retirement account, meaning an IRA, an individual retirement account, or you can open a brokerage account. They work very similar. The difference is an IRA, because it's a retirement account, you can't get to the money without a penalty until you're 59 and a half. And so if you're not quite 59 and a half, if you're less than 10 years from retirement, then, and you think you might want to use the money that you're growing in this investment account sooner than 59 and a half, then a brokerage account is probably the better fit. And a brokerage account is, again, just the container. So you put the money into the brokerage account container, and then you tell it, I want to buy this index fund, or I want to buy these stocks. And the great thing about investing, someone asked earlier today, is it too late for me to start investing? No, the best time to start investing was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. So if you have any additional funds available in your budget, even if it's just $10 per paycheck, and your savings account is set and you have a plan and you're working on your debt, and you now want to start growing your money, find whatever that small amount of money that you could put away that you will not need for at least, again, 1 to 2 years, because the market goes up and down with this upward over time, but it does go up and down. So you don't want to be relying on needing the money in a short time frame. Then open a brokerage account, again, with whichever bank or financial institution has good ratings, low fees, and you like their interface. The top rated for customer service and low fees and having ethical customer practices. And they switch order all the time, but the top 3 are Vanguard, Charles Schwab, and Fidelity. And so of those 3, just check which one you like their app or their website the best. Put some money in the container. Many of these things you can do online, or you can go into a branch if you are feeling uncomfortable about the process, and they'll walk you through it. And then you tell it, once the money's in the container of the brokerage account, you tell it which index fund or which stocks you want to buy, and automate it. So if you put $10 in every paycheck, make sure that you have it set up to put the $10 in and to go and buy that index fund. Put the $10 in, go and buy your stock. Put the $10 in, go and buy your bonds. So that way it's just automatic. And then in a few months, you'll say, oh, my little $10 every 2 weeks is growing. Will you have access to the recording after today? I believe so. I see a few questions in the chat, and so I want to make sure that I address them. I would like to get more info on 403B after leaving a job, and should we move it or sync it with the 403 with the new job? Oh, that's a great question. I think I have time to answer it. I don't like to leave. You probably have gathered, I change jobs every 2.5, 3 years because I like to make sure my money is growing. And also the military moves us, so that makes it easy to kind of cut and have an excuse to look for a new job. And so I never leave my money with an old job. And unless the new job has some really great benefit for putting more money in the account, which I haven't found one yet, and I've had a lot of employers, then I always take my old money from employer A that I've left and put it into my own IRA. So I have a traditional IRA that I opened with Charles Schwab the first time I left a job. And part of the reason I opened it this way is I didn't know what my new job was going to be, but I didn't want to leave the money with the old employer because I thought I'd forget about it because we moved too much. So I just open the account with Charles Schwab. They give you a form, you call the employer A, and you move it over to the IRA, and then it sits there. So now every time I leave a job, within 6 months, once I make sure that they've made any last deposits for my match, I see that those have come through. I call and I transfer all those funds into my IRA at Charles Schwab. And that has just been the simplest way for me, because that way I know any money from any job I've ever had is always in Charles Schwab. So I have two accounts. I have the account wherever I work today, plus the account where I've transferred all my past jobs all in one place. And it makes you feel good, because that balance, as you roll money into it over time, you're like, oh, I've kind of got a little bit of money saved for my retirement. I'm feeling good. You know, future Darla is like, she's going to be sipping mimosas sitting on a beach. Let me double check since I've changed jobs. Yes, so Joy was asking, do you recommend changing to one clearinghouse? Again, my practice, but you should do what works for you, is I take any money from a job that I've left and put it into my own self-directed IRA, which basically means it's my retirement account. I take the money that I got from those jobs and put it all together. And then I have it half in an ETF, which is an exchange traded fund. So it's like all the top technology companies. And I have half in an index fund that looks very similar to the plan I had at those jobs, which was like, I retire in this year. So have an account that's the appropriate risk for someone who's going to retire in this year. So a target date fund. So that's how I put it. And any money that goes in there, whether I put the cash in as a deposit or I transfer the money from another retirement account, just automatically invest in that 50-50 mix that I have set up. And Charles Schwab has really great customer service, again, as does Vanguard, as does Fidelity. And then TIAA CREF also has very good customer service. Those are the top four. I would recommend you avoid Bank of America. Bank of America has several settlements that they have had all types of unethical practices, especially with folks of color and their money and their banking practices. And so I just kind of stay away from Bank of America. If you work at Bank of America, sorry for you. Wells Fargo too. I want to pause because I know we are near time, and I want to tell you about some resources that are available to you now and where to find more. We answered, I think, the majority of the questions that came up in the beginning when you talked about what you wanted to know about. One thing we didn't get to is clarity, but it's okay. I have a podcast for that. So if you are trying to figure out what it is you want to accomplish, I want to send you to episode 1 of the How to Afford Everything podcast. I will drop the link here in the chat, and then Kimmy, I'll make sure that you get a link of a list of resources to send out to all the people who registered, even if they weren't able to attend, so that you can find these. The other piece is on my website. I have several free downloads, including, and this is darlabishop.com/resources, including the book club guide, which basically gives you an overview of the book if you're not ready to purchase the book yet. A sample chapter, and I included the best chapter, chapter 9, which is an overview of all the things that are covered, as well as the paycheck playbook. So these are the 9 steps that I recommend anyone take as they're trying to improve their financial situation. And then all of the worksheets that are in the How to Afford Everything book, so that you can practice these skills, so that you can work on your debt, you can work on your budget, you can plan your retirement. All of those worksheets are available for free download here at darlabishop.com/resources. And then there were a few tools that I mentioned in this webinar, a couple of calculators, a couple of comparison charts. I'll make sure that I get those links to Kimmy so that you can have access to those without having to search for them. I will stop the presentation at this point. I just wanted to show one more thing from the slides. Let me find it. Before we leave, and I'll stick around as long as you'd like, my kids are elsewhere. I want you to make one commitment, and I would love for you to make one commitment in the chat. You know, a lot of times, you know, when people talk about traveling to the past, they worry about changing the present by doing some small thing. But almost no one in the present thinks about the fact that you can change your future by doing something equally as small. And so one of my favorite personal leadership books is called The One Thing. And the concept of this book is that when you are managing several priorities, to organize and prioritize your list and put at the top the one thing that by doing it first will either make the rest of the things on your list easier or render them unnecessary. And so I want you to place in the chat, what's one thing you are committing to doing before May 1st, which I know is only a few days away, to improve your financial situation? Ooh, will and trust. We didn't talk about that. Open a high yield savings account. Start saving $1,000. These are amazing. Reduce expenses. Okay. Start building an emergency fund. These are excellent. Emergency fund. Emergency fund. That's great. Thank you so much for your time, your attention, your interaction. This was fantastic. I know we talked quite a bit about the first section, but I felt the energy that we were doing good there, so I didn't move us on. For the other topics we didn't get to, many of those are covered in the free resources on my website, so do feel free to have at them. That's why I put them there. Kimmy, anything that we need to do before we close out?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself. I just wanted to say thank you all for coming to this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you, Darla, for blessing us with your presence and your well-adept knowledge in this area, because we definitely need it. And you'll be getting a survey soon, whether it probably should have went out by now, or if not, in the next 10 to 15 minutes. And I would like you guys to provide information and feedback on your honest feedback on that survey, so I can continue to provide you with all rich experiences and working on having better events and webinars in the future. And if there's anyone that would like to volunteer and talk about things for our future webinars, or even want to see anything being put on, just let me know. I will drop my email in the chat as well. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time. Darla, do you have anything?
No, but I'm happy to stick around if you all have additional questions or want to have a little office hours with the Professor Bishop. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And let me know what you'd like to see next as well. I mean, we can always have Darla come back too.
I mean, I could literally talk about this for hours, as you can see.
Does anyone have any questions that's unanswered? Definitely more of Darla. See, we love you, Darla.
I am lovable. Makes sense. Well, great. I'll get those resources out to you all.
I'm sorry. I just thought of a question. So
Yeah.
I'm engaged. I'm not married yet. And I'm wondering, this is like, I don't know if this is all off topic now, but what your recommendation would be around like keeping finances separate versus like putting bank account together. I'm really just getting tired of like the sending the money back and forth, or the I'll get it this time, you get it next time. And I'm like, wouldn't it be easier just to have one account? So whatever, any advice you have?
I have 2 podcasts to listen to. Let me give you the link right now. Yeah. Because this is a conversation in itself. Hold on, I'm almost there. I talked about this very thing on 2 shows, on Growing with Rosie. She is a life coach and she talks about relationships. So let me get you the link to that one. Okay, that's the first one. So that's the Money and Relationships episode. And then the other one I want you to listen to that will be helpful. Let me find it. It's called the Wedding to Wife podcast. The short answer is whatever you decide, all that matters is that it works for both of you. I know couples who are happily married and financially well off with separate accounts. I know couples who are happily married and financially well off with joint accounts. And I know couples who are happily married and financially well off with the hybrid approach. For my household, we do the hybrid approach. And in both of those conversations that I just dropped the links to, I talk about why. The hybrid approach is we have a joint account, plus we have his and her money. If you, and we do that for very specific reasons. And if listening to the podcast, you'll hear why, and you can decide if that's an approach that works good, or if you're like, you know what, I'm tired of this back and forth. Like, just put it all in one pot and it'll be fine. I know for some couples, putting it in one pot is exactly the right thing to do. For some couples, that would cause the divorce. And so get real about how your money style is versus your fiance's money style is. And if whatever system you comes up with, as long as it works for the two of you, whatever anybody else has to say doesn't matter. And you can experiment with it too. Don't be afraid to experiment that, like, if you tried it this way, the way you're doing it right now is not working, then try something else. And if that stops working, try something else. The good news about being married is hopefully things go the way you're thinking about it right now, and you're going to be married the rest of your life. And so it's important to be willing and able and happy to shift whenever something needs to be shifted.
Congratulations. Well, if no one has any more questions, I will let you all go. And then once again, thank you so much, Darla. I really appreciate it.
It was great being with you all today. Have a great day.
All right, happy Saturday.